Hey YouTube, good morning. John here with our last video. Today we're not going to be rock climbing, we're not going to be kayaking or hiking in a state park. Today we're actually going to take a look at the military history and patriotic history of the town of Mineral Wells. A lot of people know Mineral Wells for the Baker Hotel, the history of the town as a spa resort, health resort. Mineral Wells has a long and storied history of producing and training and nurturing heroes, people that risked their lives and gave their lives in defense of our country, in defense of our freedom. So today we're going to visit with longtime veteran coach and social studies teacher and science teacher in Mineral Wells High School, Mark Beatty. He's going to visit with me and we're going to talk about the military history and patriotic history of the town of Mineral Wells and some of the heroes that were trained here, some of the heroes that were born here. 1925 is as good a time as any to start talking about military history in Mineral Wells, Texas. 1925 is when the headquarters was established for all mounted cavalry in the National Guard. 50 acres was set aside for the creation of Camp Walters. And the building you see on this video right here by Mineral Wells High School is the last remaining building of the old Camp Walters. Now, when the site for training cavalry was initially opened, it consisted of tents. The rock buildings were built by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the early 1930s, 1932, 33, and it wasn't until 1940 that the place was actually named Camp Walters in the run-up to World War II. In fact, during World War II, for a time, Camp Walters became the largest infantry replacement training center in the war effort. Camp Walters would later become Fort Walters and would be very important during the Vietnam era as well.
During Vietnam, there were two helicopter training facilities in the United States. There was Fort Benning in Georgia, and there was Camp Walters in Mineral Wells. And so if you flew a helicopter in Vietnam, you went to one of those two places, and most of them went to both.
Today, Fort Walters is an industrial park. It's located just on the east side of the city of Mineral Wells, and the entrance to that park has been redone so that it matches the way it was when it was the primary helicopter training center. A couple of training helicopters have been refurbished and mounted there, and the work was done by a group of civic leaders who just wanted to restore the entryway to the way it was when so many thousands of soldiers walked through those gates. And there's also a monument to the work of Southern Airways, which was a company that led a lot of the training of the helicopter pilots who flew in Vietnam. Tons of World War II soldiers from the United States got their basic training at Fort Walters in Mineral Wells.
Well, let's start with the State Historical Monument here. It's honoring Jack L. Knight, Lieutenant Jack Knight. He is the only Medal of Honor recipient from Palapinta County. Jack was born in 1917. He is the first son of Roy and Martha Knight. Now, and to talk about Jack, you kind of got to talk about the whole family. They were married in 1915. Jack was the first son in 1917. They would have 7 sons and 1 daughter. 8 children. 1920s, pretty tough. Great Depression hits. It gets tougher in the 30s. You're raising a family. They were small farmers, sharecroppers. According to Bill, they moved several times, lived in several farmhouses, but the family stuck together. They worked. Jack, being the oldest, was a leader. He graduated from Garner High School. Garner had a high school then. He graduated from Weatherford Junior College. He worked in Mineral Wells, played in Mineral Wells, all the Knight boys. And again, there were 7 of them. Played fast pitch softball, they played basketball, just avid sportsmen, loved it. They talk about seeing their first real swimming pool at the Baker Hotel in Mineral Wells, and how cool that was. It's worth noting none of the houses they lived in had electricity or indoor plumbing. That's just the way things were. As they said in the cliche, they were poor, but they didn't know it. When it became obvious that war was coming, it was already happening in Europe and the Pacific, and it was coming to America, Jack, Curtis, and Lloyd, the three oldest, joined the local National Guard unit, the 124th Cavalry Regiment, F Troop. And they were stationed in various places down on the border, Fort Ringgold. They participated in the largest war games in American Army history in Louisiana in 1941, and wrote a lot of letters about it. And again, it's all about that time period. Jack, the family, of course, they loved all of the boys, but Jack sent a lot of money home. You know, again, it's that Depression era mindset, take care of the family. Finally, the three oldest were shipped to the Pacific. Jack and Curtis were still in F Troop. Lloyd was stationed in the Central Pacific. Herschel, the fourth oldest boy, was in the U.S. Navy. And even though he joined after the other three, Herschel was the first one to see combat. He was on a battleship, the USS Maryland, one of the largest ships in the U.S. Navy. It was at Pearl Harbor. He wasn't at Pearl Harbor, but it was damaged there. But he joined it soon after, and he saw combat 4 different times where their ship was hit by kamikazes. And we're not talking minor injuries. On one hit, there were 31 dead and 37 wounded. Another time, 10 dead, over 30 wounded. Again, Herschel's not famous. He was just in the Navy. He was doing his part. But and he wrote letters about that to the family. He just, you know, again, he's doing his part. While he's there, Curtis and Jack are in the China, Burma, India Theater, the CBI. And the most famous part of the CBI is the Burma Road. And their unit was part of Mars Group, and they were going to open the Burma Road in February of 1942. And they were engaged in heavy combat on February the 2nd against a prepared Japanese position with dugouts, trenches, bunkers, machine guns, mortars, and it's all in a jungle environment. And they didn't have air support or artillery support, so it's just an infantry slugfest. And Jack led from the front. He was a second lieutenant, second in command of the company. And he was at the front. He took out 2 pillboxes virtually single-handed, throwing in grenades. Got wounded pretty badly. Shrapnel cut his forehead, and head wounds bleed real bad. The flap of skin was over his eye. There was blood everywhere. He went back to get more ammo and grenades, and they tried to get him to stay, and he wouldn't do it. So he went forward. Well, his brother, Curtis, was a sergeant, and he went with him. And they're going forward trying to take out another pillbox, and Curtis gets shot in the chest, a sucking chest wound. And it looked really, really bad. In fact, one of the books I have talking about it actually writes that Lieutenant, writing about his Medal of Honor citation, and it even says Lieutenant Knight saw his brother get killed. Well, he didn't die, but he was in the hospital for 4 months, and it was a near-run thing. But at the moment, it's bad. Jack's bleeding. Curtis is shot. The medic comes forward. He's trying to take care of Lieutenant Knight because he's second command. And he tells him, take care of my brother. And that probably saved Curtis's life. And then Jack keeps going, takes out another pillbox, gets shot again. He falls flat. He gets up, according to the citation, trying to fire his weapon again, and then gets shot and killed by a machine gun. His actions inspire Private Anthony Whitaker, a member of his company. He gets a bazooka, goes forward, grenades, takes out a pillbox, gets killed doing it. Anthony Whitaker gets the Distinguished Service Cross for that, which is the second highest award for valor our nation gives. Jack is posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, and it's worth noting there were over 250,000 men that served in the CBI. Think about that. 1 Medal of Honor. That's Jack Knight. They did not give those things away easily, and it wasn't forgotten. One thing the British do very well is honor their military. Lord Louis Mountbatten, British royalty, actually, who was the commanding general of the entire theater, commanding British and American troops, all Allied troops, came to Mineral Wells in 1972 to dedicate the F Troop Monument, which is on the corner of Southeast 1st and 180. That's a big pink granite block you probably drive by every day. And yet that was a huge occasion. You got to remember British royalty coming here, and he came because of Jack Knight, because of that Medal of Honor, and he had forgotten. In fact, they named the hill he died on Knight Hill. It was a big occasion for the Knight family, and it was a big occasion for Mineral Wells. Curtis, by the way, who did survive, received the Silver Star for his actions that day. It's worth noting, of these 7 sons, and this is just incredible, but it tells you the mindset of Jack. All 7 served in the military. 5 served in combat in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. The 2 that didn't serve in combat both served overseas. One in occupation RC, served in occupation duty in Japan, and Bill served in occupation duty in Germany. The youngest, Roy, who was too young for World War II, joined the Air Force after the war, rose up through the ranks, became a fighter pilot. In 1966, he was a major. He was sent to Vietnam, and he flew A-1 Sky Raiders, which is a prop plane. And it's an old World War II plane, but they're not real fast, but they carry a lot of armament. And his duty was, when a pilot from another plane got shot down and they were trying to rescue them, he had to provide suppressing fire in the area. So it was very dangerous. He would fly low, he would use machine guns, rockets, bombs, whatever, to protect them. He did that several missions, winning a Distinguished Flying Cross twice. And on May 19th of 1967, in a rescue mission in Laos, he was shot down. The citation mentions he continued the attack even though hit by anti-aircraft fire, dropped his munitions, and then was unable to eject, which they think he was hit so bad he couldn't eject and his plane crashed and it killed him. So this family lost their oldest son in World War II. They lost their youngest son in Vietnam. Seven sons. 2 they gave in service to our country. Just an incredible sacrifice. You know, when I bring students here and we talk about Jack and we talk about Roy and we talk about Curtis and even Herschel, who saw so much combat, it's easy to appreciate their sacrifices. But what you've got to do, and what I have the students do, is we walk through this whole cemetery. It's not very big. This isn't a famous cemetery other than a Medal of Honor recipient is buried here. There's about a little less than 400 graves here. And if you assume half of them are male, that's 200. Well, we've counted, there are over 50, close to 50. I believe the number is 48 at last count. Veterans graves. You're talking about a third to, at least a third of the males buried here served their country. None of them are famous like Jack Knight, but they did their part. They served their country. We all benefit from that, and we should all respect that. All right, here's a picture showing all the medals the Knight family, which we just saw their tombstones here at Holders Chapel Cemetery, received in various wars and conflicts. This is a key. Purple Heart, of course, Jack, Curtis, and Roy. Medal of Honor, Jack. Silver Star, Curtis, and Roy. Roy's the youngest, who was flying in Vietnam. Curtis also won a Bronze Star in another action in World War II. Air Force Commendation Medal with Valor Device is a grandson, actually, Brian. The Khobar Towers was attacked in Saudi Arabia by a terrorist attack, and he rushed in and rescued several people, administered life-saving aid, and by accounts of the citation, saved lives. The Texas Legislative Medal of Honor was given to Jack, and it's kind of an honorary thing, but it's still special. You know, they don't give many of them. The Air Medal with oak leaf clusters. Oak leaf means a second and third award. Was given to Roy for rescue missions in Vietnam. The Distinguished Flying Cross. Again, this is analogous to the Distinguished Service Cross in the Army. This is what the Air Force gives, and is the medal just below the Medal of Honor. Then the Air Force Cross, Roy also received it. By the way, speaking of Roy, I thought of this. There's another famous Mineral Wells resident, Tex Brown, who also flew A-1 Sky Raiders in Vietnam. Same job. Had to rescue or be in rescue efforts for downed pilots.
And that was that prop plane, right?
That's that prop plane, and they actually put a titanium butt plate in these planes so that, you know, AA at least couldn't go right through the bottom into them. It was going to hit them, it had to hit them from the side. But Tex Brown was involved in one rescue mission, and I've seen this photo. It had over 300 bullet holes in his plane.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing that he was able to survive and land it. And he received the Distinguished Flying Cross twice. Ended up becoming a lieutenant general in the Army. Again, just another Mineral Wells resident. By the way, he has come and spoke at our school. You know, he you know, doing his part to give back, as many Mineral Wells military veterans do. Our local VFW is named for Jack Knight. I mean, it's the Jack Knight chapter, and they do a great job. I mentioned the 800 graves at Woodland Cemetery. Every Memorial Day, they're all going to have a flag. There's been lots of groups. I've had some classes do it. Boy Scouts do it. Had one young man receive an Eagle Scout. He got his Eagle Scout award for putting out holders for those flags. There is a great military tradition in this area. We've got the Medal of Honor ring at both the high school and at the entrance to camp or Fort Walters. Talking about all the Medal of Honor recipients that were based there, trained there. I mean, it runs the gamut from the very, very famous Audie Murphy, who we can talk about a lot and should. But to a more recent member, if you saw the movie We Were Soldiers Once and Young, there's a minor character in the film, Ed Too Tall Freeman. He gets mentioned, he's right at the beginning. He doesn't have a big part in the movie, but the real man, on the day of that action at the Ia Drang Valley, flew 11 flights in under fire each time, as did his buddy Snake Crandall. Snake went through 3 helicopters that day, and I believe Ed went through 2 that, you know, had so many bullet holes in them they were unflyable, and they just kept going because they had to bring in ammo and they had to bring the wounded out, and he received the Medal of Honor for that, and he trained right here at Fort Walters. One of the veterans that I've had come speak to my class in the past, who has since passed on, was Bill Guess. He graduated from Millsap High School in 1939. It was the Depression. Jobs were hard to find. He actually worked at a brick plant near here because, you know, as you know, we've got brick roads all over the place, and that was a huge employer. But he was young, it didn't last, so he joined the Navy. He got shipped out to the Philippines, and if you know your history, of course, December 7th, Pearl Harbor was attacked, but also the American bases in the Philippines were hit. Manila was hit. He actually was stationed on Corregidor Island, which is in Manila Harbor, right next to Bataan Peninsula, which most people have heard of the Bataan Death March. It was horrible fighting there. There was a unit from just north of here, from Jacksboro, that was in the Pacific also, but they were further south. They weren't in the Philippines, but the Texas boys were, including Bill Knight. Bataan fighting lasted from December until April of 1942, and by that time they were on 1/4 rations, which is about 1,400 calories a day. Sickness was bad. They finally surrendered. It was the largest ever surrender of United States troops. They went on an 80-mile march, and you've got to understand this. The Japanese did not sign the Geneva Convention, and they believed in fighting to the death. They believed in death before dishonor, and anyone that surrendered was dishonorable and was not worthy of respect. And that Bataan Death March lasted 3 days. They were not given water, food, medical care. They had very few stops. If they couldn't keep up, they were killed. And they quit using bullets and would just bayonet them after a while. The number will never be known how many died, but it was several thousand. Probably between 2,500 and 3,500 Americans and about 5,000 Filipinos. Close to 8,000. Some say higher, some say a little lower, but it was a lot. Well, that was Bataan. Bill Guest was on Corregidor, the island, and it held out until May the 7th, I believe, another month, just getting bombed daily. They were in what was a huge tunnel, Malenta Tunnel. And this is where Douglas MacArthur had been before he was ordered out by President Franklin Roosevelt, because he did not want such a high-ranking general captured. So MacArthur escaped on PT boats. His men were left there under General Wainwright. They held out for a month, and then they surrendered. And when Bill Guest came and spoke to my class, he said, we come up out of that tunnel after just months of being bombed. Hearing loss, emaciated because they hadn't eaten. They're lined up by the Japanese, getting hit with rifle butts, yelled at. They don't understand the language. And they later were put on they're called death ships. They were put on a prisoner ship where they're dumped in a cargo hold. It's sealed up. Once a day, a bucket of water and a bucket of rice would be dropped down. No bathrooms, packed in there. He said, I don't know how many died, but they sailed all the way from the Philippines to China. But many died. When they got to China, they were taken all the way up to Mukden, China, which is up in the north. He said they were all divided up, and in that first, out of 1,300 prisoners, that first winter, it was so cold, about 350 were killed. And he said, and I remember him telling about this, the ground was so cold they couldn't bury them. They stacked the dead up behind the barracks. Died in the early 2000s. Returned to civilian life after being discharged, married, had 2 children, worked in the post office for 32 years. I guess I try to make one other point to all the kids. Just like you could have bought mail from Bill Guest and never know what he'd been through. Herschel Knight used to come watch my basketball games. I played at Brock. All them Knight boys love sports, and he'd come watch the games. His brother-in-law was Soup Campbell, who married the only daughter of the Knight family, June, the youngest. And Soup Campbell was a basketball referee. And, Herschel, you're talking about a genuine hero. Bill Guest, a genuine hero, and never knew it. And all these veterans buried in all these cemeteries, they lived around here. You never know when you're around a veteran what they went through. And it doesn't mean because most veterans aren't in horrific combat, but they served. And the cliche, all gave some gave all, it applies. They benefited us by serving. And some really, truly are genuine heroes. And I don't overuse that word. I think it's way overused in our life today. But people like Bill Guest, Herschel Knight, Jack Knight, Roy Knight, Curtis Knight, those are heroes. Audie Murphy, Ed Freeman, all those other men who are on the Medal of Honor ring at our high school, they sacrificed a lot for us, and we should respect that.
The Medal of Honor ring at Mineral Wells High School was established by a group of local officials, one of whom was Mary Creighton, the daughter of Senator Tom Creighton, and they established it to honor and remember those Medal of Honor recipients who trained at Fort Walters in Mineral Wells. Captain John E. Swanson. Captain Ed Too Tall Freeman. Major William E. Adams. Major Patrick H. Pat Brady. CWO Michael J. Novosel. Captain James M. Sprayberry. Major Charles S. Kettles. CWO Frederick Edgar Ferguson. First Lieutenant Vernon Baker. Second Lieutenant Audie L. Murphy. Staff Sergeant Joe R. Hooper. Second Lieutenant Robert Craig. First Lieutenant Robert T. Waugh. First Lieutenant Jack L. Knight. First Lieutenant Charles L. Thomas. First Lieutenant Eli L. Whiteley. Sergeant Edward A. Carter. Private First Class Leo J. Powers. And if you go out to the actual base itself, you'll find another memorial to those who received the Medal of Honor in combat that were trained at Fort Walters. There were 7 Black Americans who were awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for service during World War II. Of those 7, 3 were trained at Fort Walters in Mineral Wells. If you travel just east of town, you'll find the National Vietnam War Museum, and there you'll find a replica of the Vietnam Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. that has the name of every known casualty in Vietnam. Mineral Wells is a place where we haven't forgotten our heroes. In fact, we don't just remember them, we remember them by name. You can go out to the Vietnam Wall and you can read the names of those who gave their lives. You can go to the high school or you can go out to Fort Walters and you can read the names and see the photos of men who received the Medal of Honor for uncommon valor and gallantry defending our nation. The Vietnam Museum even has a touchscreen where you can type in the name of someone you know and love who lost their life in Vietnam, and it will help direct you to the spot on the wall where you can find that name.
I mentioned Roy Knight, perished May 19, 1967 in flying an A-1 Sky Raider in Laos. His name is on the Vietnam Wall Memorial in Washington, D.C. And if you ever get the chance to go to Washington, D.C. and visit all the monuments, they truly are inspiring. Arlington National Cemetery is incredible and humbling. If you don't get a tear in your eye there, something's wrong with you. But we're fortunate that here in Mineral Wells, we have the National Vietnam War Museum. It's about 2 miles outside of Mineral Wells, between Holders Chapel and Mineral Wells. It's truly excellent. It has a mini Vietnam Wall memorial. There are 5 local names, at least 5 that we've been able to identify that are on that wall. Army Specialist Tony Angiano, who was 20 years old. Marine Corporal Homer Lee Hodges Jr., 22 years old. Army Sergeant First Class Curtis Carl Nickerson, 38 years old. Army Reserve Captain Clyde David Wilkinson, 25, and of course the previously mentioned Air Force Colonel Roy Abner Knight, age 36. some 57,000 names on that list that perished from the early 1960s until 1975. And there are names added to that, believe it or not, every year as they discover MIAs, which is an ongoing project. And when they can definitively identify them, they add the names to it.
One last site in Mineral Wells related to military history is the T-38 Talon on display at the Mineral Wells Regional Airport. That was set there in memory of Carl Kessler, who is from Mineral Wells, and in honor of Lieutenant General Tex Brown and all who flew in Vietnam. As you've seen, if you've watched this video series, there are lots of fun things to do in and around Mineral Wells, but maybe the most meaningful thing you can do here is just remember. Remember the men and women who served our country, those who died, those who lived, but all of whom were heroes.
This is a great book called Knight's Hill, Story of a Family and More by Bill Knight, one of the 7 brothers. Lots of great stories, a lot of stories about the Depression, and one of the, I mentioned that they grew up poor, sharecroppers, farmers, with the money Jack sent home and the life insurance policy. Roy bought a 60-acre farm with Jack's savings, which was Jack's wish. They owned their own farm. And it was the first house they had that had electricity, had butane gas for heat. They'd always had to have wood-burning stoves before, and they finally had an indoor toilet. Just stuff we take for granted. That was special. And I know from personal experience, electricity came to Mineral Wells, of course, early, but the last parts of Palapinta County to get electricity had not happened in the 1950s. It was the early 1960s before that happened, which, I know to a kid that's ancient history, but it's not. I mean, again, late 1950s, you could live at Lone Camp, Palapinta, and not have indoor plumbing and not have electricity. That's a different way of life than we have here today. But one last point on all those Knight boys and June and all those many that served. They grew up in this area doing the things kids do. The technology was different, but the passions and the worries and the fears, when you read in this book the letters from Jack and Curtis and all of them, they talk about maybe getting married or what job they're going to do, their hopes. They're just like kids today. Again, technology's different, but it was the same thing. And look what they did. They did their duty when it counted and when their country needed them. And they were a lot tougher than they thought they were. And I think that's a message our kids today need to hear. Believe in yourself, dream big, and don't give up. You're going to get knocked down a lot. Trust me. It'd be hard to get knocked down worse than the Great Depression and World War II. And look what came out of that. So our kids here are capable of so much.